Good afternoon and welcome to this meeting of the Cambridgeshire Police and Crime Panel. I'm Edward Lee and I'll be chairing this meeting. This confirmation hearing is being held to consider a proposed appointment to the position of Deputy Police and Crime Commissioner. I welcome the candidates, John Peach, the Commissioner and the OPC Chief Executive, Jim Haylett. During this hearing, we will ask you some questions, Mr. Peach, with the aim of gaining further information from you on how you meet the criteria for the post and your suitability for the role. If you have any questions for the panel, we will be happy to answer them too. At the end of the questioning, we will retire to deliberate and determine a recommendation to the Commissioner on whether or not it supports the proposed appointment and the reasons for that recommendation. We will advise the Commissioner of our recommendation later today, and it will be for him to decide whether to accept or reject our recommendation. A formal report and the summary of the reasons for our recommendation will be published within 5 working days of this meeting. Before we start, do you have any questions off the panel, Mr. Peach?
No, thank you very much, and pleased to see everybody.
And Commissioner, would you like to introduce the candidate for us?
Thank you, Chair. So I'm pleased to announce that after some very careful consideration, I've asked John, who is a former county councillor and a former Peterborough councillor and indeed deputy and leader of the council some years ago. And I've asked John if he would put himself up as the Deputy Police and Crime Commissioner, primarily to support me going forward in the delivery of the police and crime plan. Now, I just want to say a couple of things to the panel in relation to my thinking in asking John to assist me. Firstly, my criteria. And when I considered what I needed from a Deputy Police and Crime Commissioner, there were a number of things that I thought about. And I reflected on perhaps previous commissioners and their administrations. And often they've looked for some police experience and law and order experience. Well, as this panel knows, I have that experience in quite some detail as well, over 30 years of policing. What I was particularly looking for was some experience in local government and working with communities in local government. And I was particularly keen that I found someone with some significant experience in that area. And in that's where I found John. But also, it's a little bit more than that. John has a background in business, which is another area, which I do not. I've been public servant all my life. So that in itself as well was another string to the bow. So both that business and that significant experience in local government. So I've known John for some time now, and I think probably most importantly, it's someone that I believe that I can work with, that we can trust each other in the delivery of this plan, but most importantly, this is about our communities, and this is about delivering for our communities. And it's my understanding, and I'm speaking with John and speaking with others that know him well, that he has spent most of his life doing just that, both in his background working with the schools, charities, and others, which I'm sure John will give far more detail around. Part of the process that I used as well, this is a political appointment, as the panel will know. And it would be quite unusual for a political appointment to have a formal process going out as many job specs would do. But I did make sure that I spoke to a number of local leaders, including the leader of Peterborough City Council and the Member of Parliament there, along with other leaders across the county as well. And John was recommended to me, not least of which for his very hard work. I'm told that he's a very hard worker and that he will support me in my ambitions going forward. So he had the recommendation there as well. So, I presented the panel, and obviously John can give far more detail about his previous experience. Maybe just one thing I will say, looking forward, what I see this role, and in front of you there is a job description with some fairly detailed points in there, what we would expect the Deputy Police and Crime Commissioner to be doing. But I think I've always been clear in my priority, and that's around community engagement. And I'm finding that absolutely invaluable, just getting out and talking to people, listening to those concerns, and then taking them back to the constabulary and putting them into action. And indeed, that's formed part of my thinking in relation to the police and crime plan as well. But unfortunately, like many of us here, I suspect, I could fill my day, twice a day, 3 times over, with meetings, of which many are very important, around governance and strategy, and particularly some of those local government meetings as well, which we absolutely, as an office, need a footprint in. But I'm struggling to fill all that time. So that primarily moving forward, where I see the role of the Police and Crime Commissioner is supporting me in that community engagement, often by deputising at some of those strategic meetings. But also there's another element for me as well. Clearly, one of the big key roles of a Police and Crime Commissioner is governance, as in the Police and Crime Commissioner controls the budget and is responsible for holding the Chief Constable to account for the effective and efficient running of the police service. Now, John brings with him some significant experience in budget management, both from a business and local government perspective. And although I have a great team around me, I have a Section 151 treasurer and others that I trust and do a very good job, it will be really good for me to have a capable pair of hands making sure that we've got the finances exactly how we want them moving forward. So, Chair, I'll stop there. I know that John would be more than happy to take any questions from the panel, but I would ask the panel to support me in appointing John as deputy so we can get on delivering against the police and crime plan.
Thank you, Commissioner. I did inadvertently skip over the first 2 agenda items, which were to accept apologies. Jane, if you could just confirm who's apologised for not attending.
I've had apologies from Councillor Tierney.
So you're muted at the moment.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can't hear me.
Yes.
You can hear me. Oh, I've had apologies from Councillor Tierney, Councillor Sharp, Councillor Alley and Councillor Ferguson and Councillor Collis. Councillor Bacon is in attendance as substitute for Councillor Collis.
Thank you. So we have Councillor Lynn absent and Councillor Connor, although he's not. Was Councillor Connor meant to be substituting?
I haven't heard that he was substituting, although he is substitute for Councillor Tierney.
Right, okay, thank you. Do any members have any declarations of interest? Okay, assuming the sound is... Can we sort out the echo on the sound? Do any panel members have a question for the Commissioner before we move on to asking questions of the candidate? Okay, so can we move on to asking the candidate questions? If we start with with Claire George.
Thank you. Good afternoon, gentlemen. Welcome, Mr. Peach, to the Police and Crime panel. I wonder if you could tell us, for a start, please, something about your understanding of the Commissioner's vision and priorities, and the role that the Deputy Police and Crime Commissioner will play in supporting these.
Thank you. Well, obviously, I've read through and tried to digest the policing plan and the job description and all that sort of stuff. And as the Commissioner was saying, I think probably I bring probably slightly different aspects to things because, you know, I've never been a policeman. I'm not an expert in policing and wouldn't pretend to be. But I have expertise in, as I say, local government, and I'm happy to expand on that, and business, and obviously happy to expand on that, and life experiences. As regards to priorities, I mean, it's very difficult to pin out one priority from another, but you've got, I forget what page it is on, but you've got the priorities from the a lot of the districts in here, and yes, it's on page 7. And it was remarkable when I read everything how similar. There's a few exceptions. I think they mention sex working in Peterborough, and that's not mentioned anywhere else, but mostly things are the same. And through experience, and no doubt you will and other councillors will be the same, when you talk to people about policing and all that, they always say, oh, you know, we never see any police around, or I rang the police and couldn't get through, or I rang the police and told them about such and such and they didn't seem very interested. And no doubt there's reasons for that, and I know that obviously the police don't tend to pursue anything if there's unlikely to get any evidence or conviction or whatever. But, you know, I do think that when you talk about the priorities of the public are they want to see more police, they want to see more police action, they want to see that the police are interested in their concerns. And of course, a lot of the concerns, as I say, are highlighted on page 7.
Thank you.
Councillor Hogg.
Thank you, Chair, and through you. Thank you for coming today, Mr. Peach, John. If you could kind of expand a little bit, clearly, you know, you've said yourself that you have no significant past experience, career experience in the areas of policing and crime. Maybe you could kind of expand a little bit more about what you feel that you're bringing to the team that we see before us, in terms of being able to support the Commissioner with his role, and more specifically the vision that he's laid out for us.
Yes, very pleased to expand on that. I mean, some of you, you know, I do know quite well, and some of you I sort of just know, and some of you I don't know so well. But as many of you will know, I've been round and done quite a lot of things over the years, and I hope some of those things I will bring to the role. I've always lived in Cambridgeshire. I just went to an ordinary, what used to be called bog standard comprehensive school. I think it's a nice school now, Jack Hunt School in Peterborough, but didn't used to be quite so good when I was there. In a very sort of mixed community of Peterborough. They didn't even have a sixth form at Jack Hunt School when I went there, so I went on to the regional college and did more GCSEs and A-levels, and there again, you know, met lots of people, did different things. My first job actually was working for the Evening Telegraph, which was an evening paper in Peterborough in those days, and it wasn't as a journalist, as many people think, the newspaper, and it wasn't the advertising, but it was in the sales, marketing, distribution of the paper, and I worked there for about 9 years, and then I got a job on what was called the Today newspaper, a national newspaper, so I saw a lot of local stuff with working for the local newspaper and a lot of national stuff working for a national paper, again doing the same thing on the distribution, sales, marketing. I then sort of gradually went into sort of a property business, which is my sort of main business now, and as many of you know, I was a councillor for 30 years. I always represented the same ward, which is fairly near the city centre, very, very diverse area, an area with lots of problems. I was on the I got elected first of all to be Cambridgeshire County Councillor for that area, and then when Peterborough became a unitary authority, I became a member of Peterborough City Council as a unitary authority member, but again representing the same sort of area of the city. And on both councils, I was lucky enough to do more or less every job on the council, and I was on the cabinet for a long time, and I was the deputy leader for some years, and then I was the leader for some years, and I've been the mayor. But also, although I don't have any, I openly admit I don't have any experience in policing, I used to be on what was called the police committee of the county council some years ago, so I remember doing that sort of job. And I was also on the fire committee, and then more latterly the fire authority, and was deputy chairman of the fire authority. So I do have some experience of sort of emergency services, although obviously I wouldn't say that I have an in-depth knowledge of the minutiae of policing. So I don't quite know if that's answered your question. It's probably a little bit long-winded, but it just sort of gives you a little bit of an idea where I come from on sort of business and local authority stuff and things I've been involved with over the years.
Thank you. So just to kind of drill down maybe a little bit further. So obviously part of the job of being the Deputy Police and Crime Commissioner would be, dare I say it, if Darryl is unavailable for an extended period of time for whatever reason, that you would need to step up basically to fulfil that position. Now, clearly, as we've just said, that there is a skills gap there in terms of your knowledge of more sort of technical knowledge of policing and crime. How are you going to address that gap? What is it that you feel that you need to do to be able to fulfil that part of your role, which may not be something that comes across straight away, but it needs to be there. It has been needed in the past, as we all know. So yeah, if you could kind of answer that question, that would be really good.
Thank you. Well, I've always, Darryl will probably tell you, I've been asking him lots of questions, and what do you think about this, and what do you think about that, and what are we doing about this, and what are we doing about that, and this sort of stuff. So I am inquisitive and wanting to get to know more, and obviously meet the top personnel in the constabulary, and find out and attend things and go to things. And over the years I've gone out on police patrol and all that sort of thing. So I'm perhaps doing myself down a little bit, because, as I say, I do have quite a bit of knowledge, but what I don't profess to know is the minutiae of, a lot of the law and a lot of the policing work. So I've got to get up to speed with that. And obviously we're hoping that Darryl will not be incapacitated in any way, shape or form. But obviously, if that was the case, I would certainly do my best. But I would think in fairly quick time I would be up to speed with things, or at least I would try and be.
Thank you. Councillor Bagent.
Given the continuing financial issues facing the public sector, could you please illustrate how you will apply the skills and experience you have in this area to the context of the Commissioner's role and responsibilities?
Yes, well, I've already touched with Darryl on this subject, because it is important, and with all aspects of finance, the money is extremely tight, and there's two aspects to it. First of all, the money that the police do get, which is a large majority of it by direct grant from the government, we need to see that it is very well spent. And also we need to keep our eye on the precept that we have to agree every year that goes on people's council tax, because people say, oh well, I pay all this money for policing. They don't realise that sometimes they only pay a small proportion of it out of their council tax. But it is important, and it is important that they see good value for money. I can only say that, in business and in the local councils, I've sort of actually talked to the finance people. I've sometimes got consultants in. I'm not saying that we'd necessarily do that, but and I know consultants have sometimes got a bad name, but sometimes there's people that are very specialist in sort of business transformation, and there's always a way of doing something different that perhaps we wouldn't immediately think of. Cutting out posts that have been vacant for a long time that are probably not necessary if you haven't filled them for ages, looking at more agile working. I know that these are some things that we're probably doing a bit of already, or quite a bit of, but you could always do more. Even and I know we've got an agreement with other constabularies on sort of procurement, but seeing if there's any more we can do with that, or making it larger, or trying to renegotiate some deals, or rent or property, look at all the properties we've got. I know the City Council at the moment, they're having to look at all their assets and try and squeeze, to make the budget balance. But, and I don't know about the constabulary at the moment, but I know that if you were to get a list of some of the properties some of these local authorities or constabularies own, it would be quite amazing to a normal member of the public, why do they own this, why do they own that? And that's fair enough if that building or that asset is working for you, but often it probably isn't. And so you've got to look at saying, well, do we want to dispose of some asset that's costing us a lot of money in repair or rents or whatever, or say we don't need that asset anymore, but we could rent it out and get some income in. So those are sort of things that are perhaps under the line a bit that the public don't realise, and it's sort of, well, I call it business transformation. I don't know what other people call it, but you've got to be continually looking at your budget, continually looking at your assets, continually looking at your overheads to make the best use of the money that we do get. Thank you.
Ms. Peach, I kind of just want to answer supplementary to that, because I felt you answered a different question, which is kind of what are the options for addressing the financial pressures. Whereas we're really interested to understand how you will apply your specific skills and experience.
Well, that is, I mean, really, yes. The things that I have done in the past are things like I mentioned in that answer. I mean, when I was the leader of the council, I got a guy in who was business transformation, and he went through different departments of the council, and he said, why don't we do agile working? Why do we have people in at separate offices? Can't they all be in an open plan office? Some people are on different computer systems and everything, and that's the sort of thing I have done. Now, whether that is quite as applicable to the constabulary as it is a local authority, I don't know, but that is the sort of stuff that I did do. And years ago, the council tax in Peterborough was running every year about 12–15%, and it was extraordinary, the percentage increase every year. And we got it down. We didn't say we won't have any council tax, because that's silly to say zero, but we did get it down to 3 or 4%, and it was done by business transformation. That's getting someone in and looking at how people work, looking at the things they do. I mean, even in the police force, I'm sure that police officers say we spend a lot of our time doing this, that and the other. And it might be that we say, well, that's great, but, do you really need to do that? Or can you spend half of your time doing that and then do something else? Because at the end of the day, as I say, people, in my opinion, when I talk to people from different communities, and as I say, I'm used to a very diverse community, they do say, well, we never see too much of the police, and if we report anything, we're hanging on the telephone a long time to report it, or if we do get through, the police aren't interested. So the top priority is satisfying some of those demands, and there might well be reasons, proper policing reasons, why the police don't pay too much attention to some reports of crime, but for the public is our priority, and that's what is the most important thing, to sort of be their voice to the Chief Constable.
Thank you. I would emphasise that we are most interested in your particular perspective rather than your views about what's possible. In other words, what you will bring to this post. Councillor Bywater.
Okay, thank you very much, Chairman. Mr. Peach, John, nice to see you. What's your understanding of the relationship of accountability between the Commissioner, the Chief Constable and the panel, and how will you positively contribute to this?
Well, obviously my understanding might be a little bit different to the normal public's understanding, because the public often, or it's very difficult sometimes to persuade the public that, the police commissioner is, doesn't have actually any sort of operational experience. It's not operational experience, but doesn't have any operational commands. So nobody can ring Darrell up and say, can you get 5 policemen round here? This so and so needs doing. So given that, we've got to be accountable, come and see you, talk to you, answer any questions or queries you would have. We've got to be the voice of the public, and we've got to have a good relationship, which I'm sure Darrell already does, with the chief police officers throughout the districts of the county, and of course the chief constable, and in the best way possible emphasise the public's concerns in a particular area about a different thing, or more generally throughout Cambridgeshire. So we've got to be the public's eyes and ears to try and get that message across to the Chief Constable, and to come and be accountable for bodies like yourself and answer your questions and queries.
Councillor Hogg, I believe you had a follow-up to that.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and through you. Thank you, Mr. Peach. What do you believe, this is kind of following on from that question really, what do you feel that the relationship between, more specifically, the Commissioner and the panel should be, and how do you feel that you can help with that, developing that relationship further?
Well, I'm not sure, to be honest. I have too many ideas on that, because I will answer your question honestly. I mean, I think it's more of a question of sort of working with you and and Darrell and the Chief Constable. I mean, over the years, and I still do it. I just sort of am always out and about and going to things and listening to people, and I think that is the main thing from all the different communities throughout Cambridgeshire, the many diverse areas, from the rural areas, and Cambridgeshire is virtually a rural county, to the very diverse inner city areas. I think we've got to be the eyes and ears, and we've got to emphasise. Darrell realises it because he goes around and listens to people and talks to people, and I will be doing that also. And we've got to emphasise to the Chief Constable and his other senior officers the feeling, the public feeling about crime, policing, law and order, antisocial behaviour in all the different areas of the county.
Sorry. From our previous conversation, you talked about your experience on the precursor to this, being the police committee. You also talked about your experience on the fire authority. So it's not this is definitely somewhere that you've from what you've said, you've got experience of working within these kind of environments. And what the question was really about was about how you feel that you can develop the relationship between Darrell and this committee, because Darrell is new in post, and so therefore maybe this is somewhere a situation where you've got more experience than the Commissioner, and this is something that you can help him with in terms of understanding who we as politicians on the Police and Crime Panel, what we're looking for and how we're looking to support the Commissioner in his role. So it's about, so what I'm trying to get from you is what you feel you can bring to be able to develop that relationship on this panel.
Well, I think it is a question of working with yourselves as members and representatives of the community, because I appreciate that you all come from different areas of the county, working with you, hearing your concerns and making sure that Darrell hears them as well. I wouldn't worry too much, because from my conversations with Darryl, he's very keen to come to these meetings and talk and be very open. And I have actually looked back on some of the meetings on YouTube, and I feel that he's actually been very approachable to all your questions, and that's probably my opinion. It might not be yours, I know, but I think working together with people like yourself that are local councillors, and I know that job so well, and people like Darryl, just getting together, talking and seeing that, you know, you're happy and you're satisfied that you're getting out of this what you want, and that Darryl, and to a lesser extent myself, are getting to hear your concerns and your worries and acting on them.
Thank you. Councillor, sorry, I just lost track. Councillor Warren.
Good afternoon, Mr. Peach. Can I ask you, how would you intend to build effective relationships with stakeholders, and could you provide us with examples of when you had to engage with a variety of partners and outline the skills you have developed as a result of this?
Well, there's an enormous amount of stakeholders involved with this, and there's the safety partnerships, that sort of thing. And there's also local groups and organisations. I know from my own experience, being a councillor in Park Ward, we got involved with an organisation called MANUP, which is a Millfield and New England Regeneration Partnership. And Millfield is a very, very diverse part of Peterborough. It covers 3 local authority councillor wards, Park Ward, North Ward and Central Ward. And it got so famous, particularly as it's a very diverse area, and there's a very big churn of population. It got so famous in some of the European countries, when some people from, you know, the Polands, Lithuania, Latvia, or whatever, and they came to this country for, you know, from work and later bring their families, that Millfield got so famous that they didn't say we want to go to the UK or we want to go to Peterborough. They say we want to go to Millfield. And that was great in a way, but it did create a lot of problems. So I helped set up with other local councillors, members of the church. We used to have our the local ward PCSOs come to the meetings, an organisation called MANUP. It's still going, and we lobbied the local authority, I think successfully, because there was a money identified. I don't really know, as I've been out of it a few years now, if it's probably been spent as I would have always spent it. But we did identify £7 million from the City Council budget for regeneration in that area, and that was a collaboration because it was a sort of a cross-party group and a no-party group, because there were representatives from local residents' associations from the church and that, which were obviously no political party. But we lobbied the council, we successfully got the money, and I know that there were plans in place for a lot of regeneration, making that area much better, much safer, and those are the sort of things that I've had experience with and have been successful with.
Thank you. So moving on to Councillor Bradnam.
Thank you, Chairman. So good afternoon, Mr. Peach. I wanted to understand from you, how will you ensure that the Commissioner takes into account the needs of diverse and hard-to-reach communities across Cambridgeshire, not just here in Peterborough, but all across the county?
Thank you. Well, obviously, from my experience being a county councillor, I do feel I know the county well, and as I mentioned, that, you know, the rural aspect of the county, which is the great vast place of the county. I mean, we tend to think of Cambridgeshire and everybody says, oh, Cambridge, and then they think, oh, there's Peterborough up north, but a lot of the area is rural, and there's lots of different groups and organisations which I would like to get involved with, go to their meetings, hear their sort of things. But as regards sort of finding and helping and hearing and then telling Darryl about it, about the problems, I feel that probably I am actually quite qualified, because I've represented an area, albeit Peterborough, which is only one part of the county, but an area that is very diverse, that has changed over the years. Years ago, when I was first a councillor, we had a lot of people of Italian origin in the area. And then we got a lot of people from the Pakistani heritage area. And now there's more people from the different European countries. And I sometimes think, or have heard people say, well, we know, John, we usually vote for you, or we know you work hard. And they say from these different communities, they say we support you because we know that you will listen to our concerns, you will act on our problems, or if it's not a thing that's to do with the council, as you know, as councillors, we get things that are nothing to do with the council, but they come to us anyway, and they're either, police issues or fire issues or national government issues or whatever. But those people say to me, they say, we always support you, and we always vote for you, because they say we know that you will act on our concerns and help us. And I think it is important that people see that there are people there that will represent everybody rather than one particular section of the community. Because I know that in, say, the Asian community, there's loads of people come from different parts of, say, Pakistan or India or whatever, and they're virtually at war with people from another part of their country or the country next door. But they say, we don't vote for, an Asian candidate from so-and-so, or a European candidate or person from that particular country, because, we know they will only look after their people, but they say we know that you will look after everybody. And as I say, living in a very diverse area, going to a very diverse school, representing a diverse area and dealing with all manner of people, I feel that I can bring that to the table, and I would do it honestly and hopefully successfully.
Okay, so just coming back on that, you've spoken eloquently about interaction with people from different ethnic origins and nationalities, but I mean, that's not all of it, is it? There's the deaf, the disabled, homeless, the young, the elderly. And I just wondered, can you give us any examples of community engagement campaigns that you've managed or been involved with, where you've, what have you done personally to ensure that all those groups have been involved in your considerations?
Well, I've worked with, over the years, many different groups and organisations, like you say. I mean, particularly when I was the mayor, I chose as one of my charities a homeless charity, Hope into Action it was called, that was raising money to take homeless people off the streets, put them in secure accommodation and work with them to try and find employment and actually to get into other accommodation. You talked about young people. I've been involved with young people for, well, years and years and years, and two of the organisations which I was particularly involved with, again, when I was the mayor, raising money and helping them, was the Scouts and the Guides, and we raised an awful lot of money, and they're two organisations that sort of, in a way, sometimes didn't like each other, because, the Guides were a bit jealous of the girls going to join the Scouts, and some of the Scouts didn't want too many girls involved because they thought it was more a boys or male thing. But we got them together, and we had lots of actual joint stuff, not just separately, but joint activities which we were able to fundraise, particularly at Ferry Meadows Country Park, like weekend camps and all that sort of stuff. So over the years, I've worked, with the homeless people, with young people, With older people, I help every year for years and years and years, apart from last year when they didn't have it. I've helped on Christmas Day at the Salvation Army, picking elderly people up, getting them to the Salvation Army and having Christmas lunch with them, providing them meals, serving them meals, taking them home, that sort of stuff. So the Salvation Army is a very big thing that I've always tried to help, and indeed some other councillors. I'm not saying it's all me. So I guess over the years I've been involved in almost every section of community or community group you could imagine.
Thank you. So I'm going to ask a question specifically about your personal skills and experience, but really in the context of demonstrating value for public money, taxpayers' money. In other words, how you will be contributing, complementing the Commissioner in providing skills and experience, specific skills and experience that will help his office to perform more effectively.
Yeah, can you just sort of amplify that a bit? You said about regarding money.
Just from the public's perspective, clearly another post in the Commissioner's office does demand being able to demonstrate that it is good value for public money. So I just wondered if you could talk a little about your specific skills and experience and how you will be applying those in a way that will complement the Commissioner's.
I think obviously Darryl did touch on the subject that we probably complement each other through sort of experience of things. Value for money is very difficult because I won't pretend that you will ever satisfy people with value for money, because they will always say, well, you're not worth it, or I would do the job for free, or you don't need that position, or whatever. So I don't know, in all honesty, if you would ever satisfy everybody on that. All I would say is, obviously, it is termed a part-time role, but I'm in the lucky position that whatever is required I will do, and I do fully know and expect that some weeks there will be meetings and things on, and full-on things almost every day of the week, and perhaps other weeks there won't be so much on, but I will be available. I never go on holiday, so I don't have any time off for holidays or anything like that. And I do stuff on Christmas Day, so I will always be at the end of the phone for anybody, or able to go to anything 24 hours a day. It doesn't matter to me. I hope that one of the things I'll be able to do is to go out with the police on patrols and that sort of thing, and I've done that before, and we've gone all through the night and done stuff the next day. That's no problem for me. So I hope that the public would perceive that I will be working hard, will be their representative. But as some of us know, in either elected positions or public life, I won't promise to satisfy everybody, but I will promise to work very, very hard and do my best, and hope that they will appreciate that it's a worthwhile position and it's value for money for their hard-earned tax.
Thank you. I mean, your answer clearly demonstrates you have a full commitment to the role, and that's not really in question. I still would like to press you about your specific skills and experience, and how you will be applying those in a way that will provide value to the public and also make the office more effective.
I think that I would say to that, through all the things that I've been involved with, probably complement the different role that Darryl's had in his professional life. So Darryl said he's never, been in business. I've been either working for private business or had my own business ever since I left college. I've been a councillor for just over 30 years until a few years ago, and I've been around and done lots of things. So I think my experience will be in often knowing where to go with a bit of more of a political and business acumen and hat on, I guess, and feeding those things to Darryl and having empathy with the population, various diverse and different groups, and also, you know, when I've been talking to Darryl, he's been saying about, you know, the community safety partnerships, the Cross Keys homes, various MPs, and, you know, I just say, yeah, I know them, or I remember this, or I remember that, or I know what their responsibility is, or whatever. So I guess that, I guess it's probably having a lot of experience, knowing a lot of people, and knowing where to go for things, probably.
Councillor Hogg.
Thank you, Chair, and through you. Just to get some clarification. So you've told us about the fact that you're very committed to putting, you know, your 100% into the role, to carry it out as effectively as possible. We've established that there are certain skill gaps in you know, where you're coming from, and that you're committed to reducing those skill gaps as quickly as possible. You know, as a, you know, somebody that's been involved in local politics for a number of years, decades even, dare I say it, you know, there's a lot goes into campaigning, etc. As a local councillor or as a candidate for local. Does this mean that you will be stepping back from local politics to concentrate on this role, or are you going to continue with that side of your life as well?
Well, at the moment, as you know, I'm not a councillor. I wouldn't say that I would never stand for the council again or would never be involved with local authorities or whatever, because I was, in fact, telling Darryl this morning, I said, I know there's a full council meeting on Wednesday evening and I'm going to go to it. And I think, as you would attest, and Scott would attest as city councillors, and Simon as county councillor, you know, I often turn up at those things and just sit at the back and listen to what's being said. So I wouldn't say that I'm going to stop doing that, because I think, in a way, that would complement my role. And I mean, I will obviously, over the years, I've been to, you know, a lot of the mayoral, the elected mayors meetings that they have now. I went as a representative of the fire authority, actually, because I was the deputy chairman when the chairman couldn't go, and I still look at those things on YouTube. The fire authority meeting the other day I watched. I know I'm a little bit sad, but I'm still in contact with everybody, and I wouldn't say that I'm going to completely give up that, because I think the involvement in those sort of meetings or being out in the community and campaigning will actually sort of help my experience and add to the role.
Thank you. Councillor Bradnam.
Thank you, Chairman. I notice under the role description for the role of Deputy Police Crime Commissioner, there's a responsibility to proactively develop, maintain and enhance effective working relationships, but also to challenge, in the same way as we are here to be the critical friend to the Commissioner. I just wondered, Mr. Peach, whether you could give us an example of where you've challenged a course of action, and if, for example, you felt that the Commissioner was going off on a tangent, how would you handle that? And if you can give us an example of where you've challenged a priority or a course of action, and what was the outcome of that? Thank you.
Well, how I would challenge if I felt that I either disagreed or what he was doing was wrong, or the way he went about it was wrong, obviously I would tell him. I wouldn't be frightened to do that. I suspect on most things we would probably agree, but I certainly wouldn't be frightened to say, well, I don't think that's the right way, or why don't you do it another way round, and then it would be up to him to think about that and say, well, actually my original decision, I still think it's the right thing to do, or he might say, John, actually, you know, that's an idea. I think we could do it that way round, and it might be a bit better. Now, examples, I mean, without giving any secrets away or whatever, when you're the leader of the council and the chief executive is obviously, you know, the leader of the paid staff and that sort of thing, we used to have a meeting every week, and I got on very well with Gillian Beasley, but I sometimes had to say, actually, I don't agree with doing it that way, or we want to do it another way, or we've got to look, say, for savings in a different direction. And sometimes they have been not what the chief executive or the paid staff would have wanted, but for the betterment of the communities and the town and the budget, I've said, well, actually, you've got to do this or you've got to do that. And ultimately, as the leader of the council, I suppose I got my own way, but I would always listen to the professional advice and the legal advice, and even sometimes when there was a government that had more money and they said, oh, we want to give Peterborough Unitary £100,000 to do this, or £50,000 to do that, or £10,000 to do that, we've actually looked at it and we said, well, actually, what does that involve? And although we're sort of being given the money, and it would be wrong in one way to refuse money, what does it commit us to? How much council tax money have we got to put into that project alongside government money? Is it really a priority for Peterborough? If you went out and talked to voters, would they say, oh, we really want the council to do this, that and the other? And sometimes